We've got a couple of new faces at the table. We've got Mo, we've got Salim, we've got Nick, we've got Amit, we've got Lowry, and Judith, and Chris, and Rob, and my name's Mikey. Let's find out what's your name?
John's mine.
John, welcome. And
Loretta.
At the moment we're sort of talking about
This chair here.
at the moment we're kind of talking about the difference between regeneration, which is considered to be a good thing, and we're talking about what is the difference between regeneration and gentrification. And how do you do it in a good way? How do you actually make it a positive intervention rather than something that just makes people angry?
I mean, you're never gonna force people of like somehow different groups together, like if they don't want to. But I think creating as many opportunities as possible where people can meet that are on the outside different somehow, whatever that means, but actually realize like, oh yeah, we're just people, aren't we? And I think like finding the similarities and the things we have in common is so important rather than focusing on the things that are different.
I mean, do you agree with what Danny says, that the posh people and the, let's say, working class people are like, or the hipsters, or the social housing people are like oil and water?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think there's definitely like in either of those groups, I'm sure there is like people that, a lot of people would like consider as like, frankly said arseholes, but that doesn't mean they're arseholes because they're part of that group. They are just arseholes in the world. That's just what it is. So, but it's absolutely, of course. And there might not be arseholes to me, there might be arseholes to you or whatever, for whatever reason. But I know, I mean, it's like like I work for an artist, and typically like the people that come to the galleries and stuff are relatively posh, quite posh. Like you can see like what people are wearing and stuff like this, and I'm very not posh at all. And it's like you can sort of like have a normal conversation with them.
Yeah. So that you do mix through the medium of art in a way.
Yes, I guess so. Yeah. Well, I get in contact with a different world that I normally wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Like yeah.
True, you can mix.
Yeah.
You can mix on certain occasions, but it has to take an event, a community event, to mix anyway.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't get them. You wouldn't just get them mixing in the street. They would walk straight past you. So if you're in the shop and you're local yourself, each local will stop and say hello to everyone. But when you got the new people come in, they wouldn't. They just walk straight past you, and then they would talk.
It depends what face you've got.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you've got a face full of scorn, they're not going to get reception. Because I talk to people all the time. Because I compliment them and I give them a reason to say hi.
Yeah. Okay. So you think it's about? I mean, we heard this a bit earlier on. Is it about the face? Is it about the attitude?
The thoughts.
The thoughts.
Subliminal messaging.
Yeah. So it's what you're thinking in a way. You've got to be thinking positive. Is that what you're saying?
Certainly. How about you, Mikey?
I always think positive.
I'm not sure about that.
Is that healthy to always think positive? Is that real? Is that healthy to always think positive? Come on.
I don't know. What do other people think?
I think it's about making an effort. It's as simple as that. If you make an effort, people respond to that. It's a simple base. It doesn't matter what face you got, and you might even have a bad face. But if you say, hello, people will say hello back to you, like of any walk of life or any.
If you say hello.
No, but that's I disagree. No, that's fine. You can be facetious, but my point is that people reward our human instinct.
Good moods.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have to have a good face or a good mood. Right? As long as you don't, as long as you're not being threatening to somebody. If you say hello, human beings, we're conditioned into responding to that effort. And that's a lot about what Danny's saying earlier on. But you're right.
Danny.
Well, Mikey, let's put it. Just say we weren't sitting around this table and we was all out in the street. Would we all say hello to each other?
Yeah.
Probably. Well, yeah, no, I would. Yeah, but it wasn't for this event. If it weren't for this event, we wouldn't get to know each other or talk to each other because we would just.
I don't say hello to any kind of stranger on the street. No.
Feeling events, I say hi to strangers all the time, but that's brought together by a common interest in music. But the funny thing is that what we're talking about right now, the social, cultural issue of different people from different walks of life trying to get together and work together, that was the essence of what politicians were supposed to do originally, is getting people of different walks of life, different social, economic levels, everything working together. But now it's become a divide and conquer thing. So.
Okay, so you think it's actually politicians' job to do this, to actually get people together? But, yeah, there's a few points.
And talk together in places like this and actually see each other.
There's also the question about the festival. In the festival, everyone says hello to each other, and they're immediately kind of in a positive mood.
I mean, I think people talk to each other when they have something in common. If you all go to a festival, you have something in common. If you come to this pub and you have Talkaoke, you have something in common. Would I just like see any of you guys on the street? I might say hello. I probably wouldn't, because I've headphones in and listening to something.
Let me bring in John into this.
Where's that from?
John, Germany. Well, my parents, but yeah.
Sorry, am I over talking?
I'll come to you in a second, but I was just trying to bring in John.
Oh, John, you're the voice of reason, and I love hearing you speak.
So, okay, so let's find out. I mean, there's a couple of questions on the table. One is about this idea of gentrification versus regeneration. Is there a good and a bad way to do it? Can people from different backgrounds mix? Do they need to have something in common? These are some of the questions that are on the table at the moment. Danny said oil and water. It's like oil and water. But other people have challenged that and said actually, for example, through art, people can mix together, and you can mix something about salad dressing. I didn't quite catch.
Oil and water is salad dressing, so it's possible.
So it's possible in a vinaigrette, for example.
Only for a taste.
But anyway, John, have you got a view on this?
Well, I have a view on absolutely everything. Now, to start with the one about regeneration or gentrification, yes, in the past, we need a knowledge of history, at least an awareness of it. Yeah. The fact is that in the past, a great deal of the success of any economy, this one in particular, because this is the one we're in, was based on the fact that industry, capital, and a lot of muscle made the whole thing work. As the years have gone by, we've found that muscle is no longer needed. Oh, well, that's rather sad, because there were an awful lot of people doing it. In this area, we've had the major docks of London, from the upriver docks, the East and West Indias, and then over in Canning Town, the Royals, and all that. Needed a huge amount of muscle and a vast number of people. Yeah. Now we do not need those people to do those things. We don't want the muscle. Oh, we're going to do that. Yeah. And so we say, oh well, we'll keep social housing, but not for the people with the muscle. It's for the people whose pockets are empty. That's a huge change. Now, if you look at this area, the one we're in, and I'm going to keep it short, but if you look at the one we're in, at the end of the Second World War, 1945, by 1947, where we are now was beginning to be rebuilt. And these premises were already up and running by 1957. But unfortunately, by 1967, the nearest docks closed. That began the decline of this area, which quickly descended into being quite a slum. But it wasn't inactive as far as human beings were concerned, because a great deal happened here. The community was very strong. It didn't expect to be respected by the big boys over in the west side of London, or by governments, but it did get on with the job of being human, which is my experience of it too. But unfortunately, because money isn't flowing into the housing of an area like that, it quickly deteriorated into a scrap heap. So regeneration, which is where I came in, joined the local housing association as a director. Regeneration was saying, let's respect human beings and give them decent premises for the fact that they are human beings and have stuck it out from the time of the Second World War. Unfortunately, we now have a change of attitude, which is that the world is divided between those that have and can, and those that don't have and shouldn't get. That's your problem. Now, regeneration was very welcome to me because it meant respecting people and giving them a decent place to live and work out their lives. As to the arts, if you look at the history of art since the Second World War, people who claim, and in fact did, come from social housing were extraordinarily prominent in leading the arts in which they practiced. That's not surprising because they weren't getting any favours. They couldn't behave like the upper crust. They had to learn what they learned, and the artists put their mental muscle into it and made a great success of what they did. Of course, that's now maybe changing a little bit, I'm not sure. But then maybe I wouldn't know. Where you get to gentrification is because there's been a huge change in London's attitude towards property and individuals and property values. Last thing, there are people here who have lived here for a very long time. They come from the Muscle era. They bought their properties for ridiculously tiny amounts of money, and they now think that they are rich and very important because their properties are worth a heck of a lot. What they haven't realised in the main is that when they want to go somewhere else, the properties they may want cost a heck of a lot more than that. So we have in fact broken it up.
Okay.
And what we see is the focus on property, not people, and that's your gentrification, because only gentrified people have the money. That's
Okay, can I just ask you, but what about now? We're in this situation now. We know, in a way, we kind of know the territory. We're all kind of stuck in this world. And a lot of people come up with a lot of actually very innovative and very kind ways to actually intervene into this community and actually make it a better place. I mean, what, in terms of how do you move forward? Rather than the history of, of what we've had, it's good to know where we've come from, but how do we actually move forward?
We need to get rid of the concept of money.
You think get rid of money altogether?
We're just throwing that out there somewhere. Yeah.
We've got to have some sort of thing. Otherwise we'll be confident.
I also think that it might be helpful to get rid of the polarity. I feel like around, I think it kind of started with you where it was kind of growing in my mind. Not in a bad way, sorry, your face was like, what did I say? No, in terms of like when initially you were speaking about where you're living currently, and then actually it emerged that your family are a migrant family and didn't have much in the beginning and blah, and it came as like a sort of defence around this idea that it's either that if you live there, you're one of them, you're posh or you're rich or you're, and then there was the idea of like the big boys and then there's the poor people and and I feel like that's just not reality. Like human beings are like,
in a way we need to ignore that kind of status issue.
Yeah, well, not even status in itself, because people do absolutely live different lives, relative to how much they earn or what part of the city they live in, let's say. But I feel like when we're talking about it, we have to think about the polarity with which we discuss this, because it creates this in-group, out-group thing that I can hear. Yeah, it's very much like the rich, poor, working class, hipsters or not, or, and that's just not true. There's, even when we look around the table, there's so much more around the table than that. I don't know, I think that might be a useful way of moving forward.
I was just saying it's a didactic way of thinking, and we want to move away from that because there are lots of in-betweens, and you was talking about polarity. Well, we don't want to have a black and white culture.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I was thinking, where so if you had some way to get everybody from the newer housing and everywhere else to get together in that green area for something that's common, to kind of interact with each other and possibly like, hey, come shop at these areas and make it more comfortable for them to be like, these are people I can talk to. Then you can get people to come and spend money in these shops and then interact with people and actually get comfortable with it. I think it's breaking the
I mean,
ice.
Amit, for example, says we should get rid of money altogether, or it could be a way to actually to kind of erase this polarity.
Education is the key.
Why?
Well, if you educate people, people will be more self-aware of others. So if everyone's got the same level of knowledge as everybody else, then there won't be none of that. There won't be no barriers. And that way, well, I think like you, you think like me. Well,
What kind of education would be important, would you say?
area education.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So education about the area?
Yeah, this is where you live. Come in to join us. Yeah.
More like local knowledge?
Yeah, local knowledge. But education is the key to everything, like with racism as well. Education is the key to racism. That's because, well, going back, people were, I'm white, I stick with white, I'm black, I stick with black. But going back, that was how it was. But now, over the last, I say, 20 years now, then barriers are breaking down, and no one don't to each other.
And you put that down to education?
Education, yeah, it's education. And that.
What type of education? Are you talking about school education or what type of education?
General education.
Okay.
You've got to live amongst the people to understand the people.
But do you get that kind of education from school, living amongst the people?
No, in school I learned a lot more out of school than I have in school, really. But
It's not necessarily about school. If I didn't know much about this area before I went to the Museum of London Docklands, and it completely blew my mind about this under the radar history, rich in history, and they tried to sort of sweep it under the carpet a little bit. But that museum celebrates it all. I go there once a month with my 18-month-old daughter. I want her to be exposed to all of the good and all the bad, but it's what it is. It's the truth.
This question of local knowledge.
It's the truth. We need to be okay with the truth of what the area has been and what all the good bits and all the bad bits. Accept it. Go to that museum. I don't work for the museum. Go to that museum, and it gives me peace with this. It makes me feel good about this area.
Yeah.
There's so much lucrative history about here. John.
No, I was just helping him to know who John is.
Okay, so John, apparently you're like the sort of the guardian of local history here. How important is that local history
I wasn't meaning
to an area?
Loretta.
You say important?
Yeah, it's very important. Yeah.
I mean, did you know about all this stuff?
I had no idea. I had no idea. I mean, I've only lived here for a year now. I'm from the United States. It's like, I mean, although I moved here because I saw it, I had a good feeling. I was like, yeah, fuck it, right? Yeah, I'm the American. Yeah.
How are you doing?
Doing very well.
Sorry.
Come on, let's flow. The whole thing has a flow.
Well, let me flow with that. Let me flow with that rhythm.
With what?
With that rhythm.
Okay, flow with the rhythm. Yeah, good.
Tony dance.
Go with the flow, right?
Go with the flow. Take a chill pill.
That's what Tony Blair said.
Anyway, where are we going to go? Where are we going to go with this conversation? Do we want to talk about?
I can see.
We're gonna go in a whirlpool.
Okay, well, I don't want to like sink down into the whirlpool.
Why not? The blue whale is the most magnificent creature I want to be.
Okay, did you used to get them in the docks?
I wasn't Pinocchio.
What's that?
I wasn't Pinocchio.
Okay.
That's how I found the love for the blue whale.
Okay.
Pinocchio. Am I drunk already? Shit.
I don't know. Is there a blue whale in Pinocchio? Anyway, where do we want to go with this conversation? Do we want to look? We've got sandwiches. We've got tuna. We've got egg. We've got egg. We've got these little finger foods, the Bombay mix, Bombay spice mix. But where do we want to go with this conversation? Can we have the lights turned down a little bit because they're up far too harsh? Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
So we talked about education. I don't have a single qualification to my name. I'm a businessman type person who go get her a bit of a doer. But my mum's got a PhD. She's got 3 degrees, and she's changed the law in the UK for sick children and education. And it's interesting what Dan was saying about it's all about education. And then we've got someone sat right next to me, Rob, who's doing a PhD in urban regeneration, which I find fascinating. I think we should need to hear more from this guy. Like, is that fair? Is that okay?
Do you consider what you're doing to be
I guess so. I mean, I think what's quite nice about doing the sort of research I'm doing is that I work in an educational institution, a university, but then, and I guess I write something which is supposed to be read there, but the actual process of doing the research, I think I learn quite a lot from the people I'm working with, but hopefully it's sort of a nice experience for everyone, and I can kind of create points of contact. Sorry, I'm being.
How do you create your data points in urban regeneration? So, no, but that's the fucking crux of his studies. That's the crux of his studies. What does it mean? So you have to have data points, either numbers or if it's just words. That's really hard to fucking put into a research paper and make it into a thing that will shape things and going forward. And how are you addressing that challenge?
Yeah, so I do interviews, long interviews, kind of unstructured interviews. So I hang out in this place a lot during the week to the cafe, and I've met lots of different people around here in Chris Street Market, and I volunteer also at St Matthias Church, which is a community centre over the other side of the A roads, and it's kind of trying to volunteer and participate as much as possible with people and kind of hear their stories. And I guess out of those stories, I'll kind of try to develop an understanding of what's going on and how people feel attached to Poplar as a place. And
what have you found out? That's my question.
Well, I think this place in itself is very interesting because it's named after a local person, Tommy Flowers, who was involved with decoding Nazi messages during World War II, and so was really influential and kind of with Alan Turing as well. So he was So it's kind of like, I think this estate kind of architecturally isn't very celebrated, whereas a lot of other estates in Poplar are. But there's a very strong sense of people caring about history here, I think.
I agree.
I really like that point. So what you're saying is, it's sort of dovetailing with my point earlier perfectly, of that there's all of this rich history sort of underground, but it's only in the history, the Docklands Museum, and it's not really kind of brought out. There's not really any monuments. There's not really any events. There's not really, and we can create that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to come back to you once that garlic and herb sour cream cheese has been sorted. But it's a valid point. I'll come back to you in a second. But I just want to ask some of the visitors to the area, people like Nick. Did you know anything about this history of this area?
Well, I knew it was a former working area that had fallen on bad times, because my dad's in the maritime industry. So all of that shipping moved to Southampton, Felixstowe, Tilbury, and 3 people can do the job of 300, You can unload a container ship with 40,000 containers in 8 hours. If you'd taken that size ship into these docks, which you wouldn't have been able to fit them in, they would have just looked at it and gone, "How are we going to do this? You know what I mean? How are we going to do this? This sheer quantity."
You knew about the shipping, but
not about the people.
The dry land.
No.
All right. So there's a question there from Chris: is how do we make this history visible? It has come across as very important, but how do we actually make it visible without having to go to the Museum of Docklands?
See, I was brought up on the history of the area through grandparents and also all the elderly neighbours from the estate. So from the history from the Victorian era, from Jack the Ripper's first ever victim, which is undocumented, was actually in Chris Street itself. 6 months before the Whitechapel murders. Iron Maiden, first ever gig, was in the church hall next there. It's a lot of Harry Redknapp. He lived in Canton Street. Grew up in
Okay. So there's a lot of stuff out there that you know because you've lived in the area. But I mean, what about people like Nick coming to the area, or people that move into the area? How do you actually, people like Amit, this is your first time here. How do you actually make this history visible? Or is it just about talking to people like Danny? Do you know anything about the history of the area?
History of the area.
This area.
Come on, Mo.
About 10 years ago, there used to be a lot of racism, but that's gone now.
Is it gone? Have you feel that you're accepted now?
Yeah.
Because people are arseholes sometimes, aren't they?
So certainly the question, the rate, that in a way that's something to celebrate as well, and it's part of the history, the overcoming of racism. But how do we actually make this visible? I think is your question.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of ideas. I mean, like it's just like you could just put some signs up saying like you're now entering the Docklands. You know, like celebrating it, man, like, and turning people onto the idea of that actually this is what it is. It's not really Poplar, is it? It's the fucking Docklands. You know, it's all born out of what John was saying earlier, that this area is rich in history for us and that, but it's not celebrated. There's not a single sign saying fucking Docklands.
The Queen. No, she came to visit us in All Saints Church a few months ago to mark. I was there too. You were there. See, to mark the bombing of a school 100 years ago.
Okay. All right. John, have you got any views about how to make history visible?
I'm sorry.
The question is, we've heard a lot about the history of this area, but how do you make it more visible? People like Danny that have lived there all their lives, and yourself that have lived here a long time. You know this stuff, but people coming in like Nick, they only know the very basics of it. Is there a way to make this history more visible?
I'm not sure whether there is a way, but there is a reason why it should happen, because we're all the products of our own history. So that everybody grows up in a context, and unless we have a respect for that context, and of course we'll never meet the people that we're going to say hello to, as several people have asked. It is
any history in a way.
Well, yes. I mean, the significant pieces of that history needs to be respected. One of the reasons why I like Afro-Caribbean people is because they bring a bit of good music, which I didn't have in Cornwall in my own youth. So that was new, exciting and different. But it's the attitude to what is new and exciting and different that really determines where we go. If we don't have that attitude, then we don't get much art, we don't get much change, and we do lose control of where we're going in the future.
Is there a relationship between this sense of history and this open-mindedness and this openness to the future?
Yes, I think very much so. But I didn't want to say earlier that it all depends upon our knowledge of history. History is something that people live through. And they live with it. It is their context. It is their view of the world. And if we come into it new and don't have respect for that, we're going nowhere.
Okay. So it's more about that kind of open-mindedness. It's not necessarily just about celebrating what's there. It's also about being open and ready to...
With history, we need to be transparent, like in America, in the southern, where they want to tear down the Confederate generals and all that. You can understand that, but I was watching something the other day, and they were saying they have no kind of plaques, no memorials of like the kind of the buildings where the slave trade used to go on. So they need to be transparent. They can have those generals, but they also need to kind of commemorate the other side of the history. Do you know what I mean? So there needs to be transparency. There needs to be like the full kind of history shown.
Okay, so it's in a way it's about what is actually celebrated in terms of...
Yeah, but we can do it through through simple architecture. So the wood that they used in the original dock buildings, the warehousing. If you look at what they're doing in the new development over the road, they're celebrating it by the actual structure of the building inside. And absolutely, if you go inside the Republic building, it's just it's very new and early yet, but it's going to develop and become a focal point for the community, like absolutely like crucial. But they're not knocking the history on its head and trying to create something new. They're fucking replenishing the old. That's beautiful, man. Like, it's awesome.
As I say, for our American friend here, Pocahontas' grave is actually just Virginia Woolf. No Virginia. Yeah, no. The Mayflower first set sail just from across the road from here. But Pocahontas, she's buried. There's a big memorial. If you go through these walls, right. So you've got Blackwall over Leamoth Dock, right, then you got Virginia Key, it's just there, it's a big memorial, there's a Pocahontas and the Mayflower. Yeah,
well, that's a bit disputed, because Gravesend claims to have in Gravesend they claim to have buried Pocahontas under the St George's Centre.
The memorial, well, I don't know, but...
Anyway, so we're talking about history. What's that?
You deliberately missed me, I didn't like that.
No, I'll tell you what the reason is because you just keep talking wait for the microphone to come.
Alright, well I can't... Hello there.
Okay, so, anyway.
Mikey, stop it.
Okay, so what we're talking about right now is we're talking about this question.
I know you too much now.
This question.
I know you too much. I know you too much.
Probably.
Yeah,
this question. I've got to treat everybody the same.
Okay, treat us equally and stop passing around the mic.
That's what I do. Anyway, let's just not get caught up in the process. There was a point over here.
It was about making like history visible, and I grew up in Germany, and as everybody knows, they don't necessarily have the most positive history, especially in the beginning of the 20th century. So, but in a way, how what I really like about it is like it's very openly talked about, and it's like, and what I really like about it is how it's made visible without being like constantly there and intrusive. They're called tripping stones, and if you go through like Hamburg, where I grew up, but also in other major German cities, they have little brass mini cobblestones in front of houses where Jewish people lived that were taken away and killed, basically. And it's like mini, and it's nice because they're called tripping stone because you're supposed to trip over them in that way. And it's like, it's not super intrusive. It's not like sign there, sign this, but it just makes it, and you walk through the streets, and you just realize the enormous like impact it had, and it's just like it is so much nicer than like having like one big monument somewhere, you know.
I mean, in terms of like remembering the dark side of history, I mean, you've talked about how it's been addressed in parts of Germany. Could we learn from that in Britain? And you were talking about only really sort of celebrating the triumphs. Could we actually learn?
Oh yeah, I mean the thing is like Britain has a very rich history, and because compared to Germany, it wasn't on the losing side in the big world wars. It's kind of told by the people that won, and it's a lot of like overlooked in that way. And it's like like Hamburg was majorly bombed by a British army, and I'm not saying they shouldn't have, but it's like kind of being open about it, and the whole like conquering half the world, enslaving loads of different peoples, and it's just like it's really like it's not really as openly talked about as I think it should be and taught in school.
Should we be learning from Germany and actually addressing the bad side of British history? Are we just celebrating all the the victories, but not all the bad things that have happened in our name?
Talking of Germany in the war, there was actually a V2 rocket unexploded, which is just near Balmoor Close, under the foundation. But no one's ever been to. There's many witnesses years back, from my nan to. It's there, but if it goes off or not, we soon find out. But it's no, from my nan point, because we was always told never to go over to that sort, because it was barren waste. It was a big green field, and there used to be warehouses here and back in the 30s. But when it got bombed, there was a V2 rocket, doodle bugs they was called, because they used to run out of gas, and then when they fall, you would never know where they hit. But to this day, all the old people, well, that was they were still alive, would swear on the Bible that the bomb's still there, and that's why when the new houses were built, they was all up in arms about it, saying, look,
so they built on top of this bomb.
Yeah, that's what. Well, obviously you go through foundation.
Yeah.
But, well, we never know if it goes off.
Yeah, so once again a kind of local knowledge, kind of local history. Where do we want to go with this? Do we want to talk about?
Asking me. I'm a bit tipsy.
What are we talking about? What are we talking about?
There's a few subjects on the table. Larry's talked about how in Germany.
I was saying, you know, Britain, we invented the concentration camp in the Boer War. I mean, you know, let's not. We've got our own dark side. A lot.
Whereas Germany's kind of addressing that with its like brass cobblestones.
What are we doing?
Are we doing enough? Do you think?
I don't know. What do you think? What do you think, Mikey? Where's your opinion?
My job in the video is just simply to move the microphone. I don't have an opinion.
Canada isn't even innocent. Canada actually is apologizing for all of the literal, the Native American, Canadian Americans, because Canada is part of the continent of North America. So people say America, Canada is America, technically. The United States is like the part of North America that is the United States. But Canada even did that whole like straight up systematic destruction of a culture and really jacking people up. Like nobody's innocent. Nobody's innocent.
The question is, are we actually addressing it like the Germans are addressing the Nazi past through monuments, through?
No, no, I don't think so.
Imperial past is what I'm asking.
What's that?
Yeah, no, Germany has dealt, well, they're dealing with their past. Is Britain dealing with its?
Okay, what do you think?
Well, there's a lot about taking back control and the borders and so forth, kind of forgetting that Britain didn't respect borders very much in the day, is it? Well, what about half of Africa, all of India? My name is Pete.
Peter, we've got Celine, we've got Amit, we've got Mo, we've got Loretta, Rob, Chris, Lowry, John, Danny, Judith, Nick, and I'm Mikey, and we've got some, but, okay, so Britain hasn't really...
Judith, I want to hear you talk more. Sorry.
Okay, well, I mean, it's kind of, the whole point of Talkaoke is up to you to decide.
I like hearing Judith talk. Judith, what do you think about the Queen?
I don't really think much about the Queen.
What about this question about Britain addressing its imperial past? Do you think that's...
No, I don't. Yeah, absolutely. I think my personal experiences of the history curriculum at secondary school didn't necessarily give me a
there's not just that.
It's fine. Yeah, I don't think it gave me enough information to be able to make a decision about, you know, how I felt about the place that I live. I think if you're a school, if we go locally, you should consider the population of children that attend your school and consider, you know, making a somewhat more bespoke curriculum in order to...
Based on the area, based on what's actually happened in the area.
That's my opinion.
Okay, so there's 1 point over there.
I'm drink fueled, so you don't want to ask me.
Okay. I'll quote.
Let's ask Rosetta a question. She clearly needs Loretta. I said Loretta. Let's ask her a question because she clearly needs to get something off her chest.
I don't like you.
be addressing our imperial past?
Oh, shut up.
So no.
No.
Rob, have you got views on this?
Mikey, sorry if I offended you.
Yeah, I don't think I've got much to add really, apart from, yeah, we probably should address that better. People talk about, someone wrote an article about taking down Nelson's column in Trafalgar Square. Because well, you know, there was the whole kind of Rhodes Must Fall movement in Oxford and in South Africa to get rid of statues of Cecil Rhodes, who was a big financer of the slave trade. And someone kind of just like wrote an article and it generated a lot of publicity, and it was all in the radio talk shows for a while. Just to be provocative, because he was kind of an imperialist, I guess.
Well, see, if we are taking the statues down and eradicating the building, that's like we're avoiding the issue. We're going to forget about it. But if the statues are there, they're going to have a constant reminder, and people will be reminded. But if you knock something down, people... Yeah, you're erasing what you set out to do in the first place.
Okay.
But if it's still there, you can remember it and go, well, we're not going to do that again.
Okay, so are we erasing history if we remove statues of imperialists?
Yeah, I think I don't think like taking down statues and stuff on a grand scheme is a very good idea, because we are erasing history. What I think is like to put, you know, if there's a statue of somebody that has like been like, oh, he was a hero, blah blah blah, turns out he wasn't, just put a plaque on it saying like this and this was War Marshal, blah blah blah, he killed so and so many people, enslaved, da da da, and so put the facts down, because the thing is there's no point in just erasing it, because people will just forget about this. And the thing is, we need to like actually like look at the past and learn from it. So yeah, absolutely.
The specific thing I'm sure you've all heard about in Virginia, Charlottesville, there's all those protests where there was the Civil War general statues, where there's all these arguments about should we keep these up or should we take them down. Now that's my state in the United States. Obviously the Civil War, all that stuff is a very touchy subject. My opinion on that is, look, if you live in that community now, over 100 years after it happened, if you do not want that there anymore, you don't destroy it, put it in a museum, and you can replace something. Don't destroy it, and you should still have a plaque there saying that this was there before. But I do understand, as somebody, as a young man, who, when I was 18 years old, I joined the United States Marine Corps, who wanted to do the whole military thing, who wanted to do I want to serve my country, all that. I understand the mentality of a very easily manipulated young man who didn't give, I didn't give a shit about anything. Like, I understand how easy it is to manipulate somebody in their teenage years full of testosterone into doing something. A lot of those young men during the Civil War, they had no idea what the fuck they were doing. They just thought they were going to defend their town. They kind of like, oh, go fight for this. Maybe they didn't have any idea what the fuck they were doing. But I agree with you, you shouldn't destroy it. But if you live in that community 200 years after and you're like, I don't want to see this anymore, if you vote for that, fair. Don't destroy it. Put a plaque that recognizes that this used to be here, and then put it in a museum that people can go view it later and be educated about it.
I think it's not just about like kind of storing it away and like saying this was here, but actually putting facts straight in that way. And it's like, because facts aren't opinion, you know. And it's like some people might like, you know, it's like you know, things like, I don't know, like let's say some British soldier killed so and so many Nazis. Like, yeah, I'm glad that they did that, because, you know, I grew up in Germany. I'm happy that it's not Nazi Germany. But it's like, still, it's a fact that they killed people, and there were fathers, there were brothers, there were like that's the thing. It's like not like kind of, oh, that was good. No, killing people is never good. So yeah, exactly. And the thing is putting the context in from two sides, because history is always written by the successors, by the winners, and it's like putting it a little bit on a two-sided thing. There's more to the story than just this one side.
So we're talking about context. Should there be a bit more context about these historical monuments? We've got a new face. What's your name?
Hello, I'm Jimmy.
Jimmy, we've got Peter, we have got Celine, we've got Nick, we've got John, we've got Lowry, and we've got Rick and Rob. And once again, we've gone, as we started off the evening, as an all-male table. And maybe it's the subject, we're kind of talking about wars and history. And is our history really skewed in this country to the kind of glory of the empire? And we don't talk about the dark side, the difficult stuff. Do we need to recontextualise it a little bit? Do we need to pull down those statues of the imperialists and the slave masters, or just put a new sign up? That's really the question.
Maybe not pull them down. Maybe not pull them down, but just change general perception. If someone. I mean, all these statues of the slave owners, the people who made a fortune on sugar, on human suffering. I mean, yeah, by all means, pull them down, but they're just statues at the end of the day. Educate people instead, is what I'm.
Is there some kind of sense of vicarious liability here? Are we apologising for the past? Is that what the theme is?
I don't think anyone wants to apologise for it. I've never heard anyone so far talking about I think it's more about just telling it a bit more like how it really was.
The thing is, all the money that's down here that we can see now, if we get up on the second floor and we look at this, that was built on slave labour.
Right, okay.
All of it.
So all the wealth and riches of...
Pretty much, yeah, because they had to pay them off, and they used that money to invest in the industries that are still living today.
Isn't lots of things in life exploitation? You're talking about slave labour paid for things, but don't people employ people to make things and give them wages? Isn't there a whole hierarchy? There's a whole kind of hierarchy of exploitation. And you're talking about slave owners of like 150 or 200 years ago. You know, have I got to pay for that?
I don't know the answer.
Well, no, it's a past. What can we do physically now that would actually years back? I weren't here. We weren't all here. It's just.
I don't think anyone's even talking about paying people back.
No, not paying back.
But I think what Larry's talking about, and maybe Salim, is just recontextualising the history so that you hear. It's coming along. Just about the glory.
See, this is why progress ain't being made, because people are always looking back to the past. Nothing good comes from the past. Try and look ahead.
Let me just come to you.
No, it just baffles me, these conversations, because they just go round and round in circles. Why not ask a different question, like what makes you happy?
Okay.
You know, and I think you'd get some interesting responses from people.
Well, that's a radical departure. We could go there. But it's kind of up to you where you want to take this conversation.
I'll say as a final note on where you're talking about recognizing whatever would be interesting. We'll use the example of the World War II, say Germany. Imagine if you had a monument that was four sides, where you have the Russian side, the American side, and then the defeated German side, and then inside the middle, the civilians caught inside the middle. A story of four different sides, people who were on one end bought into an ideology that was crushed at one point, and then you have the East Germany, West Germany of the American side, where hey, we're blah blah blah, and then blah blah blah, and then inside the middle, you're caught people inside the middle telling all the multi-dimensional stories behind it. But at the same time, you're absolutely right.
Racist. All of Europe was racist, Nazi pretty much back then. I'm from Sweden. They were big on eugenics, only theoretically, obviously, because we never actually had any concentration. We never were in the war. We brought us out of there, cowardly. But it was still there. I looked at Swedish dictionaries from the 20s and 30s. All these prejudices were there.
Okay, so I mean, what do people think about? Do we want to change subjects? Do we want to carry on talking about? Do you want to change it?
Yeah, we're all like a blind man. We're all lost in conversation here.
Okay, well, I mean, it's kind of up to my job in the middle is simply to pass the microphone around. And hello, welcome to Talkaoke. We were talking about, well, we were kind of talking about history and local history, but then it became about what kind of history we're actually considering and whether we're actually just looking at the rosy side and not actually seeing the dark side of history. But that we might be at a tipping point where we move on to a new subject has been requested, and I can see the look in his eyes. He wants to change subjects. But are you off, John? Do you want to give us a final thought? Thank you very much.
Unfortunately for you, I am off. Yes.
Fortunately for you, though.
I don't think there's anything I can really add, except I agree that there's a worry. In the end, a conversation can go round and round and not find a direction.
You're dwelling too much on this question.
Yeah. I mean, my point about history, I actually gained from a man I met a very long time ago. I used to like going to sea in ships from Cornwall, and he was an old skipper from the Thames estuary. And he said, look, don't worry about learning about navigation. People tell you you've got to plot your course as to where you're going to go. I'll tell you one thing. The most important thing is to know where you're starting from. And that's my point about history. Just let's know where we start from.
Has it got, just before you go, John, has it got implications to Nick's question about what makes you happy? Do you think that question of history and where you started from actually does reflect on happiness, or is it irrelevant?
I think it does, because out of your own personal history you do construct ambitions and ideas and aims and targets as to what you would like to achieve.
Yeah.
So yes, I think it does.
Are you going?
It kind of informs your world and what you can and
Yes.
Oh, John,
Yes.
go.
Well, it's because you.
Let's go.
There we go.
We don't want John to go. Can he come and have a sit back down?
I mean, there's one thing I need to impress on everybody around the table is that this is entirely voluntary activity, and should you want to get involved, you're very welcome to. But those who are ready to leave should be allowed to leave. Anyway, this is Talkaoke. It looks like we've got a couple of new faces. Come closer. Don't see why this has been electrically tested. We've had a few glitches. Come closer, come closer. We need to, don't worry, you won't be asked anything apart from your name. We have got Danny, we've got Peter, we've got Jimmy and Rob. My name's Mikey. What's your name?
Laura.
Laura and Alex. Come closer. Let's give him a round of applause. Come on, here's a round of applause.
I have a boundary.
What's that?
My name is Alex.
Alex, welcome. So at the moment, I mean, we're kind of...
Extinction.
We're kind of...
Extinction.
What do you want to say?
All the fuss about this extinction business.
Yeah.
Why can't we just accept it with good grace that we've had a good
Gonna get
run, and like the dinosaurs, did they make such a fuss?
Just to
You know, why and the dodos? You know, why can't we just accept it and like have another beer and?
As Darwin said, it's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the adaptable. So you've got to learn to adapt.
I mean, but what are we going to do? Are we going to just extinct, or are we going to adapt?
Extinct gracefully, that's what I do. Go out in an orgy, a party, whatever. If you only get one life, live it.
How do people feel about dinosaurs, eh? How do people, I mean, were the dinosaurs having the same conversation? Listen, we're going to extinct, let's just go out with a bang. Let's pop. Yeah. Or did the dinosaurs try as hard as they might to actually adapt to the new situation? Okay, all right, we're just going to have a quick break because we're just going to try and find Loretta's phone. If anyone's seen, what is it, an iPhone? A white iPhone. Let's just give it a call and find out. Okay.
Have a good one. See you later.
You sure you brought Again, if anyone's seen a white iPhone, it's Loretta's. Okay, so we're back to the question of extinction. Should we, as Jimmy says and Danny concurs, should we just be, just accepting our fate and just like...
Sorts didn't really extinct, they just evolved.
Yeah.
Things that...
What, into what?
Modern day animals.
Yeah.
Wolves. Because things got smaller, so the dinosaurs had to adapt.
Right, okay.
The T-Rexes turned into chickens.
Right, okay, so... Yeah, do the dinosaurs...
Wasn't there also a meteor involved with the whole dinosaur thing as well, which, that's not been totally proven, but something,
So what are you saying? What are you saying, Rick?
Well, a meteor hit
do you believe that are we going to extinct?
At some point, yeah. Whether it's sooner or later, yeah.
I mean, what do you think of the people making a big fuss of it over the weekend in central London?
If we wanted to, I'm guessing if we want to survive like how we are now, and the Earth is now, yes, we do need to make changes. Otherwise, the world will change.
Yeah.
Yes, but I imagine humanity will probably adapt because we're quite an adaptable species. So
okay, so
to some extent we will, but whether the Earth is the same as it is now, things will change to some extent. Yeah, but whether there's still like the same amount of humans on Earth in 1,000 years, who knows? But I imagine there will be some humans.
Okay, so, yeah.
See, the reason I made that comment, I just want to be kind of provocative. I just want to try to hear some different points of view.
Yeah.
The thing is, if this Extinction Rebellion thing has to take off, then we'll have to have like a whole worldwide kind of outbreak of altruism that the human race has never seen before.
Yeah.
And people, I don't think we can expect the human race to adapt.
You don't think that we've got that necessarily compassion?
We won't. I mean, people just talk about things like taking your coffee cup back to Starbucks, as if that matters,
Yeah.
I mean, that's not what we need to do. I mean, it's just a complete change of lifestyle. Our affluent lifestyle will just have to stop.
So it's not about having a reusable cup. Hang on a second, let me just come to Salim. He's had his hand up for a while. I'll come to you in a second, Peter.
At this point, with the system we have now, no. But human beings, the Homo sapiens, are extremely adaptable. So, unfortunately, the world we see it right now, I don't think we will survive necessarily. But if something cataclysmic happens, which probably will, there's going to be a small percentage of the population that will survive, and then the new civilization is the one in couple thousands and thousands and thousands of years, the ones that are going to go to space and get out of here. But as way we know it right now, I think we're kind of...
So how do you get to be in that small percentile that actually survives?
I mean, look,
by living in polar regions.
Yeah, okay.
For example, or by living underground. Helsinki is a good bet.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah, okay, so you think the rich will survive?
The Illuminati, would you watch? This is all this...
The ones that can move will survive.
Okay.
Enough of us. I don't think humanity is going to go extinct. It's just that a lot of us are going to die. Well, actually, all of us. All of us are going to die.
All of us around the table. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think. I don't think we will become extinct. I think we're like cockroaches. That some of us will survive. Millions, billions will die.
Yeah.
But we'll always survive, and whether we go to space or not. I mean, we're not that far from asteroid mining.
Yeah.
And once you can start asteroid mining, then you can start making space arcologies.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
What's going to be the key to surviving and not being amongst the billions that die? This is my interest.
Money and being smart.
Yeah. An iPhone. Okay.
An iPhone.
So we're talking about Extinction Rebellion. Was it worthwhile? Are we going to go extinct? Is it just going to be the masses that get extinct? That's what we're talking about at the moment. Are we adaptable enough to be able to roll with the punches? You say no.
The only people that are going to survive are the 1% who have the money. And
so it's the rich that will survive.
Because they can.
They've got a well-stocked wine cellar.
At least Armageddon is going to be like going to be equal, isn't it? Like whether you're rich or poor, we're all going to die together, right?
Okay. Well, this is the question on the table at the moment. Will Armageddon be the great equalizer? Thank you, Ami. Or will the 1% survive with their wine and cheese deep down in their cellars?
The only person left alive will be Gloria Gaynor, of course.
Yeah.
What about Keith Richards?
Okay. Okay. So what? I mean, I don't know. I mean, Is this like a necessary kind of pruning of humanity?
I think if we're kind of forced to change our habits, we will change our habits if we have to. If there's no choice, you will change your habits.
But who's going to force us?
Well, governments,
circumstances.
Circumstances. Yeah, exactly. But if we have to live in certain ways, we'll live in certain ways. That's the thing. But
so we will
if
roll.
we're given options, people will choose the easy route. That's what people do, isn't it? That's what it is.
So we'll always choose the easiest route available, which leads to survival. Well,
I was just gonna. I kind of agreed. What's your name again?
Laura.
Laura. Yeah. I think it would just kind of be a more extreme version of what's happening now, where if you're richer, then you can protect your body and yourself much more easily.
Right.
Than
So
if
you
you're
think the rich
poorer
will survive?
around the world. Well, I mean, eventually maybe everyone will die, but for a long time it will. I think sometimes we think about it as going to be some disaster in the future, but really it's just going to be an intensification of the disaster of the present. In a way.
Just as earlier,
the other thing I was going to say was just that. I think the only way that people would be able to kind of change the system is actually if they thought that they would get a better life out of it. And I think there are many better lives that we can have beyond capitalism. Like the affluence that we have is so impoverished in so many ways.
So you've got to present something better in a way. Okay.
I read this theory recently that laziness is the key to innovation because those of us who like to take shortcuts, we actually innovate by finding more economical kind of ways to do things. So laziness is the key to innovation. I'm just throwing that out.
Is laziness good for the environment as well?
Well, laziness is. No. It's about finding an easier way to do something, isn't it?
Danny hasn't been out of Poplar for 10 years, so he's got a tiny carbon footprint.
Outside the East End, I say. I'll expand it. Everywhere is here. I don't need to go to the world. The world come to me. I adapt to that.
I have no children, so I don't need to worry about my carbon footprint until I do. I can do whatever I want, and I'm like way more environmental than anyone else.
So are we now deciding like who's got the best environmental points on the table? Yeah.
But do you think that when I came in a bit late tonight, and I think I came in at the end of a conversation that the theme was about like kind of the guilt of Western imperialism and all those kinds of issues. Yeah. And it seems like there's almost like, with greatest respect, almost a kind of an arrogance that people in London are talking about. It's almost just.
Sorry.
The point I wanted to make was we're having this conversation. We're having this conversation here tonight.
You think it's a kind of luxury?
And people in the West are having similar conversations, but are they having these conversations in China?
Yeah.
Are they having the same kinds of conversations in India? I mean, what about like the population growth in Africa? They should have babies, but the population in Africa is going to be unsustainable. So, I mean, we're having these conversations, and we're coming across as kind of enlightened individuals, and we feel quite good about ourselves, don't we, for talking like this? But where are these other conversations going on? And they're the ones that really matter.
I mean, has anyone been to China or India? Are they having those conversations there?
I lived in China for some time.
Are they having the same conversation, Extinction Rebellion?
Some people, but not. I mean, it's hard to say because the media.
Because they speak in Chinese.
I don't speak Chinese, but the media is so controlled, so you wouldn't know if they were having these conversations.
Does the media talk about environmental issues?
No, they do things like they'll paint a mountain face green to make it seem like a healthy. Green space. Like, I don't know, that's the impression you get, but the media is so controlled.
So maybe Jimmy's right. Maybe they're not. This conversation is not.
Okay, can we all shut up because it's? I'm trying to ring her phone.
Okay, we've done this already, but we can try again.
What do you mean?
I'll get it somehow. So if anyone who has my phone, give it back to me.
If someone moved by mistake, they're not going to know. To be honest, I really don't think anyone was on silent. Have you checked in the toilet?
What toilet?
You sure? Go back to your seat. You come in there and then you get up and no, I came home and they came back and they finished my pocket. It's not there. I mean, we all get little wrecky and our music. I can't use my phone again. So my birthday was on the song. Remember that, my friend? So let's go back to
To be honest, I don't think anyone in here tonight. I don't think I've kept an eye on everyone walking in the door, and it's all on camera as well. And I don't think there's anyone dodgy walked into this bar.
It was that old guy who left. He must have nicked it, yeah?
That guy John. Yeah.
What's your number?
That's so cute. But we've rung it twice already, so...
Yeah, it's all been rung. I think you might find it at home somewhere. Anyway, let's just maybe continue on with the conversation, because I feel like we're not going to find the phone this way. We have tried. But anyway, let's just carry on with this conversation if we can. Maybe
now everything's all like fragmented.
Let's just carry on with it.
So he's just talking to me about this.
Oh, we're back to okay. Let me just can I just like refocus this here? So this is Talkaoke. Let's maybe just get another round of names. So what's your name?
Danny.
Judith.
Salim.
My name.
My phone's convinced.
Disney. No, it's Pete actually. You know this.
Loretta.
Rob.
Laura.
Alex.
No. Actually, what I was doing is I'll let you into my technique here. It's just to refocus the table, because we've had a bit of a distraction there, and we've kind of, it's all about flow and the flow of the conversation, and we've completely lost the flow now.
Have you read Dale Carnegie's How to blah blah and influence people? Because that's talking about the importance of remembering people's names and then annoyingly sticking the names in people's faces all the time, thinking they like it from a complete stranger, which isn't the case in England.
No. Where are we going to go with this conversation? Are we going to talk about extinction? Are we going to talk about Judith's artwork, which is on the wall? Are we going to talk about our addiction to telephones? Are we going to talk about the spectre of alcohol abuse, which we've touched on quite a lot this evening?
Maybe, could we hear a bit more about the artwork?
What would you like to know?
What inspired it?
What inspired the artwork?
So, what's on the walls is called Coloured People, and it's part of a larger series called Vicissitudes, which essentially chronologises my experience of working in a predominantly... Well, I've worked in South London for the past 2 years, having moved from working in East London, which is predominantly white British, and then Bangladeshi, and then I moved to working in South London, which is an amalgamation of different races, but predominantly black Afro-Caribbean. And just my experiences of watching the way that human beings interact with one another, and how that can sometimes be tied into their perceptions of race. And also certain parts of it are also depictions of my experience with my fiance, who's white German and black Afro-Caribbean. Yeah, that's that German bloke over there. So it's a bit of it's an art thesis. It's a bit of a critique on the socio-linguistic constructs of race and how we experience them.
What do you mean the socio-linguistic?
So the idea, the labels that we give to race and how we interpret people or make assumptions about human beings, or how we use colour, like the colour of skin or creed or culture, a range of things to understand other human beings. That's basically what I'm talking about. I don't know if that answers your question very well.
It's a construct.
Everything's a construct, right? I mean, we're all like people.
Is it a useful construct?
Well, sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not.
I'm mixed. I am mixed race. Like my dad's from India, my mom's white, and I'm from the United States. So it's like one of those things. I grew up all my life. I was very ambiguous. Like, oh, you're this or this or this or whatever.
Do you think that race is a construct? Is it even something?
It's not very useful. But you got to understand that the human brain evolves in spans of thousands of years, and we're very tribal. So if you're thinking about back in the terms of the most primitive senses, I'm sure that the whole color or this or whatever serves some sort of purpose. Like, oh well, this protects me somehow, but it's totally useless now. Totally fucking useless.
Well, the only distinction is between sort of you and me is you can't turn sunlight into vitamin D as effectively as I can. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter now, but it mattered when we were both living on the edge. When we had to fight for survival, then that little extra bit may well have made a difference.
So your ancestors in the polar regions.
Well, we lost our pigments because it gave us survival over the winter. The ability to turn sunlight into vitamin D. So, and certain other kind of propensities to certain disease. There's a number of subtle, but because we're genetically such a narrow spectrum.
How important is that biological difference?
Not at all now. But we like to make distinctions between people. That's what we do. We
You said what you did to me.
No.
What did you say to me? You said about my grandmother. And then you offered me to come back to yours for wine.
But I mean, what's that got to do with the question of race?
What's the question of race?
We're not everyone is even 100% Homo sapien. Some of us have Neanderthal. I mean, that's so we're not even like a homogenous species apparently. What do you make of that?
Okay, well, I make nothing of it at all, but I'm going to spin around to this side of the table and ask them, invite them into is race a social construct? Is even Homo sapiens a social construct?
It's a human-based construct where it's all the same genetically, 99.9999999. But if you're talking about why us them, it is totally constructed in your brain based upon preconceived notions. There's nothing that actually separates us and them. It is a very touchy, shitty subject to talk about. But if you're referring to why the human brain wants to try and black and white, red versus blue, that versus other, we are tribal people. Even right now, what it's going down to is like, even right now in the fucking United States, it's like Republican, Democrat, or here it's Working Party, Labor, or whatever, or this, that, the other.
Southerners and let me just bring you down in there, Judith.
Sorry, now I've lost conversation. I've got no knowledge of this, that's why I can't.
You can't get involved?
Yeah.
And I countered that by saying he does. I think, obviously, if you use a word like sociolinguistic, it makes it all, very difficult to make sense of. But actually, it's just saying that, like a society use language in a way that reinforces an idea. So if we continue to use words like black, white, and have forms that say white, other, black, mixed, then you reinforce the idea that there are differences between human beings that are tangible, when actually, as a number of people are saying, these things are very arbitrary and actually quite fluid. Like they can change over time. Even in our conversation that we've had around the table around posh and hipster and working class, and actually that started to change as we were talking around the table, and then you were like, yeah, well actually over time in Aberfeldy the whole like black white thing started to change. So the idea, and those things changed not just because people do different things, but because people start to talk about things in a different way. So that's the whole like socio-linguistic idea, that if we change our language about things, then we change the way that we shape meaning around ideas.
So it's a constant conversation, and in that conversation it gets defined, but it actually gets changed.
Talk about people.
I just want to tell you, I felt there was a nod.
Just a nod.
No, but you have come a bit closer, so that shows that it's starting to get interesting. Was there something on this side?
Yeah, there was something I was going to say. When people don't recognise what they said before, they should shut the fuck up. Well, this Vista tried to pretend that he didn't say about my grandmother, and he did.
Okay, what did he say?
He said about...
Because I can't remember it.
Well, I remember it.
Yeah.
You were trying to make out as if we were a bit inbred.
Okay, I mean, is that once again another example of a sort of...
What are you going to say, Mikey? Be careful what you say, because we're friends.
No, I'm saying, is that another example of a kind of like the words construct, the words as the socio-linguistic construct.
Trying to get him out of it.
No, what I'm trying to do is actually generalise the conversation so it's not a personal needle between you and Peter, it's actually a conversation that we're going to have.
Peter.
That's another trick
another
there.
ball game.
Anyway, so we're talking about this question of we're talking about that Judith brought up, that the idea of race even in itself changes all the time. It's not something that's permanent and that's etched.
The same race, we're the human race.
Well, you know what the funny thing is, though? The whole reason why we don't breed asexually as a species is for genetic variation. So the strongest offsprings are actually formed from the most deviated of parents.
Yeah.
There you go, right?
Maybe one Loretta took offence at the inbreeding.
I don't know. There you go, right?
I've just entered this conversation. I was outside for a moment, but I think was often missed out in these kind of conversation I've heard previously is the question of culture. People seem to focus a lot on race and about kind of skin pigmentation, and not so much about culture. I mean, I've been living around here. I've got Bangladeshi neighbours who are culturally very similar to me.
Yeah.
Very similar to me, and I could have English people further up in the north of England, and I've got culturally very different to them. So to me, it's a lot of it is about culture, and I get bored with the use of race all the time. Where it's a bit more, the argument is a bit more sophisticated than that. There are a lot of more. There are more factors in.
Why do people dwell on the question of race?
Because we.
I don't know, but I'm just. The reason I'm saying this because I hear it so often. This question of race, and it's really about a question of culture, in my view. Really, the thing is there are a lot of issues that are really kind of cultural problems rather than racial problems.
So can I ask then, how did you come?
This is a personal attack on me. Please leave me alone.
You personally attacked me.
All right, let's.
You know what? The two things that can bring people together are music and food.
Anyway, Judith, your question.
I don't know the gentleman's name.
This is Jimmy over here.
Hi, Jimmy. I just wondered how you came to that how you came to that understanding of your neighbours. Was that just through observation or through conversation?
I think it was making an effort to be a good neighbour. And yeah, so I'm a bit distracted. I think there's a little thing going off there. I made an effort to be sociable, to get to know my neighbours, and if we're talking about race and we're talking about black people, I know a black guy, I remember a black guy that used to live in Poplar. He was more of a Cockney than me, he was more of a Cockney than me. He was a fairground, he worked in fairgrounds, and he was, he had much more of a Cockney accent than me. So I think a lot of it really is culture, and I think race is, as I say, I think it's a much more sophisticated argument than just purely this race is different than that race. I think there's different, there are other factors involved, really, and I think the way to break it down is not to focus too much on race, it's to focus on what you've got in common, and
solve the question of race is race. I mean, we heard a lot today about how the question of racism has diminished. but I don't think it's diminished completely. And have we actually got over that hump, or is it still?
It's not diminished. It's become covert. It's become covert. I used to be a London taxi driver. And the racism I had, so you get a little criticism of like white working class racism. You get these like stereotypes, but the most virulent like kind of racism I ever heard was like from the upper classes, the middle classes. I had dreadful stuff that I don't want to repeat it really, but a lot of it was very kind of anachronistic kind of terms for black people that you don't hear anymore. But I heard a lot of it, you know, and it's dreadful. Anyway.
Okay. So I guess we're
Go on. Ladies first.
Well, no, well, the conversation kind of started talking about the artwork, and I just wanted to make the point that it's not necessarily like highlighting like race. Yeah, no, I know that, but just as a point from you know to sort of defend my own work, it's more of a depiction of my sense making about my experiences of people interacting of different races, as opposed to the idea that there's, you know, the kind of racism that once used to exist that doesn't exist, that exists in the form of microaggressions now. So it's less about that. But I just wanted to make that point.
I mean, what is it? Let's going back to the artwork. What I mean, is there a sort of, in a way, a kind of way forward, kind of suggested in the work that is about, you know, how we can define race in a more positive way, or we can be more comfortable having the conversation about race and about different coloured skins or whatever it is.
Yeah, so I guess the work, you know, essentially hopes to create a space where people can have conversations about that, and it's more, you know, it's an art thesis that culminates in the final piece, Fiction in the Space Between, which is, you know, an illustration that actually the construct of race lies between the human figures. So all of the shapes that you see on there are the spaces between overlapping human figures, and actually it's nothing to do with the colours around the human being that we have to focus on in order to define which is which. So that's kind of the journey that I hope that people would go on. But yeah, that's why I was interested to see what people thought about it, and if it actually thank you.
Maybe it's, you know, after this conversation we've had, maybe it's just time to have another look at the work. And does it change the way you see it now that we've heard from what Judith said?
See, it's not about race, it's about current situation you are in at the present time. As Jimmy said, people from up north, they all think alike. It's a current situation you're in. It's not race. It's just, see, with my family, I can hold a table at United Nations. I've got from Chinese, Tunisian, Italian, English, Irish, and Jamaican, all in the family.
Is the table then the space in between all of these?
No, it's a good party in the end. But no, United Nations. My family, it's united, and we all get along. That's how we all get along. But it's not race or not. It's not man, female. It's a current situation you're in. You can choose to be polite with your neighbours, or you can choose to be racist or whatever you want. It's all about current situation, and then you see how people perceive you from different point of view. And there's no culture to it, it's just current situation. The culture's individual, that's what I think. But
is culture individual? Is it about this space in between, be it Danny's table or these painted areas in this, the final work in the series?
I do think there's a kind of a collective consciousness about culture and identity. You find it in groups, you find it. I was really interested when there was some report was writing about the English football team, for example, like when they go away on a trip, the different ethnic players tend to group together. So you get those like naturally forming groups that sometimes in a wider society we try to change that. We try to enforce kind of integration where sometimes people just don't want to. I think we have to kind of address that as well. You know, some people don't
don't wish to embrace multiculturalism.
Yeah.
They like a particular kind of monoculture.
Yeah.
And can we say they can have that if they want it? Is that denied to them? Can they choose to live like that if they want to?
I mean, yeah. I mean, what do people think about that? Because it's like, at what point does choice kind of define it, and what point is it about? I guess, constructing.
It's the current situation you live in at the moment. It's how you take on board things. If you want to be happy, be happy. Want to be aggressive, be.
Yeah.
It's not what.
But I mean, what about if you're the victim of that aggression?
It's the current situation you're in.
What do people think? Should people be able to define the world that they live in? Be it a monoculture, as Jimmy said?
If a person's being angry with you, you want to try and work out why they're being angry. So if you're shouting at me, I'm going to think, well, what can I do to make you not shout at me? How can I turn the situation round and become friends?
Is it possible?
Yeah, it is. It's how you act or deal with people. It's how. So, say if you've got someone like a bull in a china shop charging at you, well, you're going to try and be that matador and stop the bull. Say, look, why are you shouting at me? I'm in the same boat as you.
Yeah.
Why are you being aggressive? I'm not being aggressive with you.
Yeah.
Try and calm. You've got to try and talk and get you've got to see how they're thinking and get round to their way of thinking. And then that way there'll be no argument. Diffuse the situation.
Okay, so.
Do you think there sometimes might be things that you do that are not intended as aggression but might be perceived as aggression, like rightly so or not, like that's beyond like, well, there's lots of things like there might, what we were talking before about, like giving the wrong looks. Yeah. That might be perceived as like aggression, but it's not meant as aggression. But it still doesn't change in a way that we still like on either end of that interaction. It's still like, and then once like there is aggression in the room in that way, things are perceived as that, and then it just kind of gets higher and higher and higher.
You can always highlight and say, well, I was looking at you because I like your hat. Where'd you get it from? Now that changed the aggression.
Yeah.
They get to the people thinking, well, he's not giving me, he don't hate me, he's actually complimenting me. So try something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting points here. Alex, Laura, have you got any views on this? Have you ever got into
The point of looks meaning something is kind of interesting, because I lived in Glasgow for a few years before I came back to London. I grew up here.
Yeah.
And there was a massive readjustment and moving back here about 5 years ago of like realizing that you don't look at people here. Whereas in Glasgow you look at people to make friends or to like just interact. Whereas down here you don't look at people. Why don't you look at people? Because you're gonna get aggro, yeah, absolutely.
No, but there are people in Glasgow who are like, why are you fucking looking at me?
Absolutely.
Have you been to Glasgow as well?
I'm from Glasgow, so.
Okay.
And that might kiss you the Glasgow way.
My father's from Glasgow, and I'm interested in what you're saying about that there's this idea that like big cities and great big, it's kind of not practicable to be too nice and making eye contact. There's this idea that there's an idea that, cause I visit my parents live out in Essex, a quiet place, and Holland-on-Sea. Fantastic. Jaywick's absolutely fantastic. Oh, fantastic. Anyway, that's another conversation. But when I go there, I find it very stressful, because when I go for a walk up to the co-op, people say hello to me. And as I'm walking along, I think, is it my turn to say hello to somebody, or do I have to wait?
There's walking etiquette.
Yeah.
There is definitely a walking etiquette that happens everywhere you go for a walk in the kind of countryside kind of environment. But I think when it comes to cities, it's that thing of like a smaller city. In London, you definitely have this thing of like eyes down. It's eyes down. And then people, and when people ask you for eyes up, you engage, and people can be friendly in London. I think everyone that comes to London that I know that are friends that aren't from here constantly talk about how people are friendly in London, which I find very, it's a really complicated argument, but
Which you find very what?
It's a very complicated thing of like the etiquette, like what you were talking about before. This is where it came from. The idea that if you give someone the wrong look, and I'm saying that in other places, the wrong look is the right look. It's like it really comes down to that.
So it's a very complicated system of how you look at people.
But don't you feel that just due to the number of people that there are in London, it's just too it's too cognitively demanding to process that many faces, that many expressions, that many all of your senses.
If you go on the tube, like on the tube for example, if you're on the tube going down an escalator, you bump into somebody, you don't make a big deal about making an apology unless it's too intrusive. You just go, oh, sorry, and keep on your way. Because sometimes if you stop and make a big deal of it, that can have an adverse effect. It can sometimes kick off a row. But whereas where I visit my parents, I'm kind of, oh yeah, you're in front of me, and there's a few niceties, a few pleasantries exchanged. But I just feel I've heard this from anthropologists that the idea that big cities, it's just the practicalities of living that you don't, and also another thing about this conversation. I grew up in East End and pubs. The kind of the dynamic of it could be perceived as rude from other people because people will interrupt. And when we're talking here and we're having everyone's having a little LSA, no one's interrupting, and the next person. But the kind of culture I grew up in, and when I went into a pub, people were butting in. Yeah. People butting in, and this to me is kind of like if I'm going to be talking about culture, this to me is like very middle class. Yeah. This is very kind of like Radio 4. Yeah. Because people are like, I don't know sort of if that's a pejorative term. I don't want to be pejorative, but there's the idea that the kind of we're all very like listening to each other and saying like, oh, I understand your point of view, and I don't quite Anyway, sorry.
Well, I think it's more Radio 5 Live than Radio 4. But I don't think it's actually true. I mean, I used to live in London. Yeah. Now I've moved out into the country. Yeah. My attitude's completely changed. And even when I come into London again, I'm still with that more countryside thing. I say please and thank you to the bus driver, and they look at me odd. Apart from the lady who was driving the 309 that brought me here, lovely lady, do you know what she did? She didn't drive off as soon as the doors shut. She allowed me to sit down before she did it. And double-decker buses.
Yes, she actually is quite very nice, considerate. I've been on the no, because I've been on the bus before, and because I was waiting for the bus stop once, and this dog come up running up towards me, and she actually commented like most bus drivers always ignore, but she said, well, she saw that dog go to attack me. I said, yeah. I said, well, that's just a puppy. And that, but she said, if you want any a win, I said, no, you're right. But she is a considerate bus driver. Yeah. Well, she's a better one out of a lot of them. Yeah. And a good driver.
Not more feminisation of culture, please. Sorry, just that.
Sorry, I got what's it?
Sorry.
I've worked for the last couple of years in Birmingham, and that is a big city, and it has a completely different vibe to London. Yeah. Everybody says hello duck and all that sort. I think it's just very, very friendly.
Why is it? I mean, that's a good point because Birmingham's quite big. There's a lot of people there.
I think because it's still very villagey, even though all the villages are put together now. It's still very, very villagey with a definite identity in these different areas. And you can argue that London has that sort of thing. Does it still? I don't know. But there...
This is the village of the damned.
But in Birmingham, everyone's really friendly, and you don't get this snooty attitude that you get with people, or no one's a like wannabe threepence gangster.
It's not without liberation. The idea of just being able to get on with stuff without.
So it's kind of like an anonymity, is it?
Yeah, there's some benefits to definitely. Do you not think?
Just slip into the crowds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people these days find that easier to deal with than having to actually engage with a community of people. And maybe that's because in London people are, I guess a lot of people are living in such precarious situations where they don't get the time to actually feel part of a community. They just have to keep moving borough, moving area, moving, you know, and building up that dynamic with a group of people where you can, you know, walk down the street and say hi and feel like you know people in the shops and stuff.
So for you, it's more of a question of time. It's the time isn't.
I think that has a lot to do with it. Yeah.
Not just the time
I think
on a daily basis, but the time of staying in the area.
especially for younger people, probably having the time to be in a place long enough to feel part of it is.
Social media has killed chivalry.
Let me just get a final thought from Nick. When we talked about a lot, we didn't quite get to what is happiness about or whatever that you threw in there at one point. But have you got a final thought about anything that we talked about today?
No, just be happy.
Okay.
You know, just do stuff that makes you happy. Don't hurt anyone, and just be nice.
What makes you happy?
Laughter of children. That makes me laugh. No, that's a guilty pleasure. But it's but the thing that makes you happy is the laughter of children when they're having fun and that sort of thing. Although I do sometimes laugh at children when they have, you know, Schadenfreude. You know, that whole sort of
That's a whole other Talkaoke for another day. In fact, you know, it might be safe journey to Battersea.
Finally say it's the first time I've been along to this Talkaoke. I really enjoyed it, I wish I'd come earlier actually.
Okay, well, last Thursday of the month we are here, and everyone is welcome. I kind of feel like it is that time actually that we need to, because I've been in here since 7 o'clock, and it's the
bucket full.
Unless someone else wants to have a go in the middle.
Should we clap?
If you want to, should be a more spontaneous thing.
We've never been. We don't know.
You know, there's no rules. There's 2 rules: no singing, no fighting, and we kind of edge. No singing, yeah. Then we've got karaoke on Saturday night for that.
Should I sit under?
Are you gonna have a go? Okay, so we're going to keep this conversation going. And the other great thing about this is that this gives me a chance to express my points of view as well. Because I think sitting up. Yeah. Rick's got. Oh no. Rick's like.
Is it much about expressing your view, or is it more of the usage of the toilet?
Well, no.
Okay.
I'm only on pint number 2, so.
Okay. The bladder's alright.
I'm driving in the morning, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't want to wake up pissed.
Okay. All right. Well, it's something we might be able to talk about. You can go under or over, Rick. If I can just ask you to. Let's give Judith. And now I am going to ask for a round of applause because we've got a new face at the table. Before.
It's so different, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's very different.
So,
just having a moment of precognition. I think you're doing really well, actually.
Oh, precognition? Yeah. What do you do for a living? I really just need to know this man.
I'm trying to turn over the apple carts of presumption.
Are you now?
I've given my business card up.
Okay, let's just get around the Maxis to begin with, and then we'll go from there. Actually, the other thing you can do is raise yourself up a bit.
I know, and I'm like, my skirt's trapped and all sorts going on.
And now it's gone. You take it back the phone, or?
What's that?
If I don't get to the next phone, it was here.
Is that okay?
I think it's in one of the things.
Another white phone.
Another phone. Probably in this one, so. I've got to check my social media as well while I'm at it.
Okay, so we'll start with the main man.
Mikey.
Jimmy.
Oh no, my dress is pretty. Hold on.
Let me just we can just probably raise you up a little bit.
It's really stuck.
Raise up the. Sorry. I'm
Wait,
just
wait,
trying to find. Oh,
Wait.
it is. It's
There we go.
There we go. Up a bit. Yeah. There we are.
Right, let's
Cool.
start again.
Okay. Right.
Okay. Man in the blue shirt.
Mikey.
I just suddenly become James, actually. I change. I do morph into James occasionally, yeah.
Laura.
Alex.
Danny.
Laureen.
Okay. Hello, guys. Oh, we missed one. Oh, we missed two.
Rob.
Rob, you've got the best jawline in the world.
Oh, well, thanks.
Oh my. It's amazing.
Yeah, my jawline's hidden. Rick.
Hi, Rick. Okay, so.
I just was wondering about this table.
Yeah.
Is there some kind of like hierarchy in this seating arrangements, or is it all? It's all supposed to be equal, isn't it?
It is.
But what I mean is, if people come here often, do they tend to sit in the same seats and assume certain?
I don't think so.
You've not. Are you new?
Yeah.
We're new.
Or like we didn't know this was. We just I don't know what's going on basically.
I don't want to be sort of offended by.
Does everyone know what's going on?
Does everyone know each other?
Do you know each other?
No, quite.
So, this is Talkaoke, hosted by The People Speak. The People Speak is a well-established organisation that have been going on for a long time. When I did my very preliminary research of them, they've actually done this in a number of countries, let alone areas. Yes, did read. And
we should hire you.
It's been going on. I don't know what happens currently, but what I do know is that this has been going on for a number of years, and it's really like socially active, trying to get human beings around the table to converse, to think critically. I'm sorry, I
Very specifically this table. This
well,
table.
I believe that these tables are approximately 10 grand a pop.
You know.
I've read. You know, Mikey. Hi, Mikey. You know I've read.
So are we all using these? Are we then?
So please use coasters. Where do we start?
It is beer proof as well. Yeah, it's
Thank God, because I didn't make a mess of this.
See, I think there should be more of this.
Wait,
it's all 12 volts. It's not going to argue pictures.
This is my number one question for everybody. What are your reflections on this evening, this process that you're a part of, up until this point? So I feel like you started to talk about that. You said you feel like what?
No, I was just kind of. When I came along tonight, I thought I'd just try and say a few things that slightly, a little bit left field rather than the usual. I was just wondering what the conversations might be.
Yeah, but
so I thought I'd try to.
Experience of this evening. How has that been?
I've really enjoyed it. I wish I'd come along earlier. But what I'm interested in is kind of the dynamics of it. Like you've got this round table, and I'm just wondering, like, am I sitting in somebody's seat that normally sits here? And I wish I didn't think like, but I do think along those lines. You know, although it's a round table, you generally find that like hierarchies soon get established, don't they? But like George might sit over there, or someone.
Down until I realised that the bag that is under my chair had disappeared. It's disappeared now, but it's still a bag under my.
The whole point of it being a circle means everyone's on the same standing. So that's why there's no hierarchy, because everyone's the same. Look, the same ramps, the same length.
What about the
if
one
it
in the
was
middle?
square.
Protected by the ring in the middle.
Well, it's Lord of the Rings. I
protected that.
But no, everyone's the same. That's why circles used in a lot of symbols, because eternity just goes round and round. Like even the Knights of the Round Table, they never had their particular seat. They just got in from a crusade, sat down, had their. I don't know. I'm waffling on that one, but.
How about you, Rob? How have you experienced this evening?
This is my third Talkaoke, so I've enjoyed all of them. Tonight was quite rowdy. It was quite busy. There's like a lot of people and a lot of people at the bar, and it's sort of sometimes it's sort of a practice of listening to each other, I guess, is part of like one of the virtues of Talkaoke. So it's interesting to like how do you facilitate that when in a pub people are normally expected to just sort of drink and do their own thing and that kind of thing. So I wonder, I don't know, it's a small pub, so you can't really get away from the table actually.
Yeah.
Or if you are near the table and you talk, and it kind of disrupts the kind of conversation or something, and the active listening to each other, which I think is quite an important part of what Talkaoke is actually.
See, the pub itself, it's not like a pub, it's like someone's living room. You come into someone's heart and home. And it's just, you don't even feel no animosity. It's like a living room, you're visiting Nick's and that, he gives you a drink. Yeah. Put EastEnders on in the corner. But no, it doesn't feel like a pub, it feels like your own. Yeah. And you can always come here and feel warm. That's
That was what pubs used to be like, in my experience, living around here. The pubs, as the word, it's ipsa loquitur, the word ipsa loquitur, the Italian word for the thing speaks for itself. It's a public house. So for me, when we grew up around there were pubs, and they were kind of like public meeting places. They were like large living rooms, and the Builders Arms, the Franklin Straw Hats, all those pubs. I can be clever and sort of like roll off a load of names to try and impress people with my heritage, but I won't, unless you insist. But anyway, no. But what I mean is pubs. The idea of a pub is the idea of a communal area where people can gather without too many inhibitions. Yeah, a public space, really, and that's what I really like about this. This is it's got that kind of atmosphere that I used to have in pubs around here. It's not. I don't find so much anymore. I find a lot of pubs now a bit intimidating because sometimes other things are going on. That I'm. Yeah.
I was in Bethnal Green last Friday, and I was just coming out of the toilet, and a fella go to nudge me. Right, just thingy, but he was trying to flex his muscles. So I said to him, I said, it's a small pub, isn't it? He went, what? I said, it's a small pub. Now, I wasn't trying to cause anything, and then he's flashing, he had this like Rolex watch on. So I said, does your watch tick? And then the night ended like that. So I've not how I lost a teeth though. Skydiving.
What do you think, Mikey? What do you think makes a pub a welcoming space?
I mean, I don't know. I remember a lot of because I'm actually from Gravesend. It's been talked about today, and. When I used to come to London, a lot of the East End pubs seemed to be a bit intimidating in the early 90s. And you do, in a way, it's that other side of it being like a sort of welcoming for the locals. You felt coming in, I mean, in a way, it was always a little hump that you could get over. But, you did kind of it was that thing where everyone looked round at the door when you walked in.
And do you think you experience that when you're in the Tommy Valley?
Definitely. Well, yes, but in a positive way. Everyone's like, oh, who's the next person? And I love this pub because it's such a variety of people. And that's what I really enjoy the Talkaokes that we have here, because the people that come are just so diverse. But they've got one thing in common. They're all, as Rob said, they're listening to each other, and they're wanting to respond, and they're wanting to hear different ideas. And that, I think coming from the hipster place that I come from, they think that they've got the edge on listening and ideas, but everyone is doing it. And I think that's the nice thing about this pub is you sort of you come out of that bubble and you get a much wider set of opinions and thoughts.
Are there any ideas that people have heard around the table that they feel have struck them this evening, maybe from somebody that they didn't necessarily say something like that? I'm going to go to you.
No, I mean, it's not quite relating to that question. But what I've realised is I've been to a few smaller pubs, micro pubs as they probably call, and I've realised that the community, there's much more a situation where people talk a lot more, and the bigger pubs now, you go in there and it's just an expanse. But the smaller pubs, you just end up having conversations because it's just that situation of a smaller atmosphere. people are there, and you just end up having conversations. And yeah, I was in Bournemouth recently, and I just went into a pub, a small micro pub that's opened, and yeah, you just end up having a chat with whoever's there because they're there and you're at the bar, and yeah, you just have a conversation. It's fantastic. Right. Yeah, in a way, yeah. It's just because it's the situation. You can hear that conversation, and you just want to. You go, oh, that's interesting, and you want to end up. Yeah, exactly. So maybe it is I think maybe that's the future of scale. Yeah, the scale. Maybe that's what it is. You go in somewhere, you can't escape anything because you're there. You can hear everything. So I don't know. It's the observation.
I guess like small pubs in a way beautifully force you to interact with whoever's there, and it's like you can't really as easily have like a lot of separate groups. Like you are kind of eavesdropping almost like without your choice, it automatically happens. And I guess that's in a way is the beauty, because you're like, wait, what? I have an opinion, and then you end up in a conversation, and it's like you have an exchange, and I think that's the beauty, especially if like this pub, there is like such a diverse audience coming into this pub, and it's not just like a very homogeneous kind of everybody looks the same, everybody does the same. I'm sure if you go to like a small bar in like Canary Wharf, everybody will be like middle-aged, white, and working in finance, and it's like. Sure, they have interesting conversation. Not for me though. It's just like, I'm sorry, but it's like, yeah. But yeah.
What I'd like, sorry if I was cutting in there, but what interests me about pubs is that I'm fascinated with the ordinary. I love like I know it's probably bad manners, but eavesdropping on conversations. And sometimes you could be on a bus and you hear this most banal conversation, and you're listening to like a drama on the radio. It's just like it's fascinating. How can they talk like that? How can they talk about like having their washing machine serviced for like 20? I eavesdropped on a conversation, two people sharing a secret on a telephone years ago when they used to have these crossed lines, and they was talking about somebody, and they were having this conversation, and one said to the other, no one knows our secret though, do they? This is true, this is honest, this is like slightly less than 2 pints of Guinness talking. And then I waited for the moment to cut in, and I said, but I do, don't I?
The reason why we got conspiracy theorists. You're the reason, eavesdropping, terrible thing. The Illuminati, that's that.
Did you hear anything this evening that struck you
Can I get you off from the table and can I have 2 pints, please? I'm still working, I'm still working, so I'm looking at the screen for potential customers as well.
Where's Mikey gone? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Okay, new topic of conversation. Any ideas?
One thing, sorry.
What's your opinion on Marmite? That usually is quite
I love that thing. Was it Jerry Horner's doing a commercial for it some years ago?
Oh, sorry.
And before she sort of struck gold with Murdoch. I think she was doing an advert for Marmite, and it was quite lucrative. And she was like, in an offhand comment, she said at some kind of showbiz do, I just put it on my shoes. She used it. She put it on her shoe, and it's like totally destroyed her career as a Marmite rep. Just vanished in one sentence. But it's closely. Thing is, it's closely associated with Bovril. Is there like rivalry between the two? Is there like wars, like the Wars of the Roses, like the Marmite and Bovril factions? Is there? Are they similar? I don't know. I don't really know. I've not really.
You put it in Bovril is made into a drink, so it's just like a watery gravy, which is like, yeah.
You can lock yourself out before bed.
What I think should happen is that there should be a like or hate between Marmite and Vegemite.
Vegemite,
Same
Australian.
Just Marmite with margarine mixed in.
I know what it is. I know what it is, but we should have a fight.
I hate Marmite, but I love Twiglets, which apparently are coated in Marmite, so I don't quite understand how that works. So maybe it needs to have that kind of whatever Twiglets are made from.
Can I just say that like that I mentioned Marmite was more or less a joke, but I love that it's like a full-blown conversation. Honestly, don't ever underestimate British people and Marmite.
So, can I ask? That's really interesting. How are you keeping us?
Yes, I'll be back in a minute. She's got to go for Jimmy and again.
But that's what I find interesting. I struggle with like with small talk. I often sometimes say things just to kind of stir up the conversation. You know, if someone says to me like, "How are you?" I find it difficult to kind of have those conversations. Does that make sense?
That awkwardness and small talk.
Yeah, I do.
Does anybody around the table feel completely comfortable in most or social situations which require small talk? I'm going to go to you because you're really thinking about it.
No, because small talk's quite interesting because people normally just go to the default situation, which is like weather or something.
Yeah.
And that's kind of easy to answer. It's when the awkward conversations come up. I'm trying to think of an awkward conversation.
What makes you feel awkward?
No, I'm just when they really like put you in the deep end. I'm trying to think of a situation, but that doesn't happen in small talk. But like when you just someone just like filling the gap, and they're not going to ask you. Normally, you don't end up with like an awkward conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm trying to think of an awkward question. But yeah, when it suddenly like completely throws you, and you're like suddenly like, what? I wasn't expecting this, but it does happen.
Someone puts a microphone in your face and asks you a question.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think about it.
Final thought. Be happy, like the other one said.
Cheers,
How do you feel about small talk?
I always thought I hated small talk, but actually I realised that I take great comfort in being able to talk to anyone that I meet about the weather and stuff. And I know it's really awful and uninteresting, but it's like just a basic universal thing we can all at least forge some connection over, which I think is nice.
How are you skilled in the art of small talk?
In the art of weather talk.
Yes.
Just accepting that it's crap, but it's like okay.
Yeah, Oscar Wilde said something about small. He said about weather. He said like when people start a conversation about weather, they really want to talk about something else.
Yeah, of course.
And that's just like the entree, and then they just want to start the conversation off, but they want to go to the next. Yeah.
My mother has a similar thing of likes to imagine everyone else is on holiday. She likes to imagine everyone else is on holiday in a way that's like this thing of, as she does that thing of like, oh, everyone's away for Easter.
Bank holiday weekend recently we were in the pub on the Saturday. It was very quiet, and I was like, I took great enjoyment in the fact I could say to a random person at the bar, oh yeah, bank holiday weekend, everyone's away, everyone's out of London, and I was like, God, I've become what I hate. But
Final thought.
We might be back.
Thank you for having us.
We're going to look for the phone. We might come back.
Alright, guys.
I'm interested. Also,
I have a topic for conversation for next time, a bit lighter. Like, what does olive skin mean? Because it means green. Olives are green or black, but olive skin people are not green or black. What does it mean?
Okay.
Let's get final thoughts, and then we're going to close it down anyway.
Now,
Let's get final thoughts from everybody, and then we'll go.
Now my personality is going to change now, so I'm in charge. So I'm going to be completely different now, and I'm going to not listen to anybody. Yeah, okay. What interests me though, in the way that small talk in a different, a lot of the conversations tonight seems to have been about context, about different things like race and culture, but the idea that small talk in different contexts. I mean, for example, if I were going home tonight like late and someone said to me, "Have you had a nice day?" That's kind of a small talk. It's kind of sinister in a different kind of context. You know what I mean? I'm very interested in language, the way that like context affects the way that language, like that something that can be quite sinister.
Whereas I'm trying to find is an antonym or the opposite of it. Someone could say something quite sinister in a party mood. Like I'd stab you if you don't buy me a beer. You know, I will stab you if you don't mind me. I quite like saying that actually. No, but do you know what I mean? I'm interested in the way that language, in context as well. You know, the way that it can be sinister by just saying, you know, like, have you had a nice day? Anyway, I better get back to this. This is getting a bit weird, isn't it?
You must listen to Kanye West's album Yo, because his first song is all about what they're talking about. Just saying. You know? You and Kanye have some things in common. So, do final thoughts.
Final thoughts.
Do you want to go first? Okay.
I don't mind.
Wait, sorry. Does it have to be on nothing? Anything? Okay. Final thought.
So my final thought is that it was my first Talkaoke, and I love it. It's absolutely amazing. Like trying to interact with like people who have opinions, and it's just like a kind of manufactured situation where you have to do it, and it's absolutely beautiful. And big bonus, I love this table. It just reminds me on, like I said it earlier, outside. I just feel like I'm in the budget version of Star Trek. I love it. Yeah, I just love it. Yeah.
Other than the fact that your jawline is the best.
I have had that before. I don't know really. No, I don't have a final thought, but I once met a girl in the queue to a cloakroom at the end of a night in a club in East London, and we had a really nice chat, and then I was studying at SOAS in Bloomsbury doing my masters, and one day a friend texted me and said, I think you need to go to the common room. I think you need to go to the common room, and she'd put all these posters around the common room were up saying we met in the queue at this such and such club, and I don't know your name, but you have a gorgeous jawline. and we had a really nice conversation.
Amazing.
Yeah.
About jawlines or?
No, just about everything, whatever you talk about at the end of a night. Yeah.
The next series is not going to be about race and ethnicity. It's just going to be about jawline. Final thoughts, my love.
I've been completely thrown by the Star Trek thing and this being a Star Trek table. I'm thinking like, I'm being a Star Trek fan. I'm thinking,
I just feel like it's like Star Trek.
I love it. Yeah, I'm now, that's all in my mind now. So I have no final thought. No, thank you.
Marky?
We should take you to our holodeck, because we have got a kind of holodeck type project known as Segway, but it's very complicated to put on. However, also, this is another point to Lowry. I just realised we're actually looking for a German Talkaoke host to go to Bielefeld and do Talkaoke in the town square of Bielefeld in September. So that's something that maybe you'd be interested in.
Fun fact about Bielefeld is it doesn't exist, yeah. It does. Absolutely. But there's this urban legend that doesn't exist. And I think it's based on that. At some point, the drive off the motorway, the exit on the motorway was closed for a long time at some point because it was building, and that's where it started. The urban legend. It does exist.
Jimmy.
Well, thank goodness we're finally talking about Star Trek, and I remember trying to endear myself to a woman I'd recently met about my knowledge of Star Trek, and we was having shared comments about it, and she said to me that she remembered when she used to watch it years ago that Captain Kirk had a bit of a beer belly, and that provoked a sharp intake of breath and consciousness of my own waistline, because I thought he had quite a good physique. So she had very strict criteria about kind of things like any excess stuff around the middle. And ever since then I've been very conscious of not wearing tight-fitting outfits in the show business,
Laura?
That was beautiful.
Oh God. We came here very late by accident. But I'm very glad we did, because I feel really happy, because before that we were at a gallery that had an exhibition opening on London City Island, which is this horrible new development in Canning Town.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is just fucking horrible. The gallery is like, it just made me so angry and depressed. And yeah, and this is just like really amazing and lovely. And I think everyone should have beer and microphones.
Mostly I've been thinking about why have I spent so much money on pubs that I didn't enjoy going to, and trying to find somewhere that was less bad than the other one.
Yeah, it's bad.
And this is probably an infinitely better option. So that's really what it comes down to. Yeah.
And final thought from Nick Juvenal, also known as Jubi.
Well, it's nice to be part of something within this pub community and to have the people speak here. So, and here we are, and here we have done. So, it's just my final thought is let's carry on.
Yay! My final thought. What is my final thought? It's been really nice just being quite sober around the table. The last time I was here, I was really drunk. And I re-watched it and I was like, God, you're really drunk and you're using all this complex language. But it's been really nice to be quite sober and really listen to other people. And I've really just, appreciated hearing other people's views on their lives and just whatever, but, whatever views people are sharing. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
I just hope we can meet again soon, really. I mean, I really enjoyed meeting you.
Next Friday, next one is the last Thursday of May, which is, I believe, the 29th of May.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and we've booked that in already. Yeah, certainly. So, and if I would say to Lowry, please do come there and have a go in the middle, because you could end up having a job. As well with Judith and anyone else around the table, the chair in the middle is yours as well. I much prefer.
Almost fluent in German, just saying.
Wirklich, sehr gut. So thanks, let's turn up the music and drink the night away.